Have you ever wondered what mountains and coastlines would reveal if they could speak? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where stone remembers and forgotten legends linger in silence. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and share where in the world you're watching from. The Gate, where time slows. Along the western edge of Gozo, in a landscape where sea and rock have argued with each other for millions of years, there lies a shoreline that feels strangely unfinished, as though something is missing, yet still present in its absence. This is Dweidra, a wind-carved headland where Malta's most beloved natural landmark once stood, the Azure Window, a limestone arch that framed the horizon like a giant doorway suspended above the water. For centuries, it endured the pressure of waves, the weight of tourists, and the soft erosion of salt and time, until one storm finally claimed it, breaking the span in a single dramatic collapse that folded stone into sea. Today, what people find at Dweidra is not a ruin to mourn, but a threshold that seems to invite reflection on time, change, and how landscapes remember what they once held. Approaching the site feels like walking toward a memory rather than a location. The ground underfoot is pale and uneven, pitted by age and shaped by slow tides. Salt pans sparkle in shallow terraces, evaporating into thin crusts that cling to rock like frost. The smell of seaweed mixes with sun-warmed stone. The sound of the Mediterranean is layered, distant swells booming against underwater caves, nearer waves breaking in irregular pulses, and sprays of water hissing along fissures before draining back to the sea. The view opens gradually, a long, low horizon where the Atlantic blue shifts toward turquoise, and where the space once occupied by the arch remains as empty air that your imagination instantly fills. It is almost impossible not to see it, even though there is nothing there. Visitors stand at the edge and describe feeling as though the arch is still present but invisible, traced into the air by memory or by the insistence of the place itself. Divers who explore below confirm that the Azure Window didn't vanish, it simply relocated. Massive slabs of limestone now lie scattered on the seabed, forming new shapes and new terrain. Where tourists once walked, fish now weave through shafts of sunlight. The arch has become reef. Its collapse was violent, but its transformation was immediate. What broke became habitat. The sea does not waste what it destroys. Above, the headland has learned to live with absence. The void frames waves. Photographs capture what is no longer there as much as what remains. The wind that once whipped through the arch now moves unobstructed across open water. In certain directions it forms a low hum across crevices, as if passing through a phantom opening. Geologists look at the coastline and see continuity. Erosion is slow but inevitable. Collapse is part of process. The landscape is still shaping itself grain by grain. Visitors do not see process. They see the feeling of something gone but not forgotten. Sit along the limestone shelf, and the notion of time begins to stretch. The sea repeats movements endlessly, waves lifting, folding, falling, with no urgency and no hurry. Foam drifts into cracks and dissolves. The rock beneath you warms slowly in sun and cools slowly in shadow, breathing heat in and out like something alive. Even the water seems to move by memory. Currents shift as they hit submerged stone, breaking patterns that might have existed when the arch stood. It does not take long before you feel that this coast is not empty, but paused, as though something once monumental left a resonance behind. What makes this place compelling isn't that the arch is gone, it is that the coastline didn't lose its identity when it fell. At sunset, the entire space transforms. Light slides across the remaining limestone, turning grey, rock gold, then amber, then deepening to reddish tones. The missing span becomes more visible in silhouette form. Shadows align against cliff edges, creating the faint outline of the old arch for a few moments before fading with the sun. The sea brightens in reflection, but the coastline darkens, and for a brief time the place feels suspended between daylight and memory, present and recollection. No monument stands, yet a monument is felt. Night arrives without ceremony. The wind cools, the sea turns to black glass broken by silver ripples, and stars appear above a horizon where no stone obstructs the view. If you remain long enough, you become aware of gentle sounds that don't belong to living creatures. Tiny clicks as limestone contracts under cooling air, faint echoes rolling from hollowed caverns under the surface. It sounds like the coastline, adjusting itself, almost settling. In those hours the place becomes solemn, not sad but contemplative, as if the missing arch absorbed human presence and left behind a quieter intelligence. At dawn, the transformation reverses. The sea reddens under low sun, the limestone cliffs brighten again, and the void becomes softened rather than stark. Early morning is when the collapse makes most sense. Here, landscapes are not static trophies, but living arrangements, changing form constantly, even when people aren't watching. The azure window was never permanent. Its fall merely revealed the pace of geological time to human eyes. People still come. They stand at the edge and stare into a span where stone once framed the world. Some arrive knowing the arch is gone. Some only realise it when they reach the cliff. Yet almost all of them describe feeling something. Not disappointment, but recognition. The arch belonged to Gozo for centuries, but Gozo belongs to the sea that shaped it, and that sea is still shaping what remains. The story did not end with collapse. It simply moved beneath the surface. And perhaps that is why this site feels so cinematic, so suited to voiceover narration. You are not describing a ruin, you are narrating continuity. The coastline never lost the arch, it absorbed it. It did not become less visually striking, it became more atmospheric. It did not lose meaning, it gained layers of interpretation. The gate. Where time slows isn't about what stood here, it is about what remains suspended after disappearance. You leave understanding that this place is not absence, it is transformation. The arch once carved the sea, now the sea carves what is left of the arch. Above ground there is air, horizon, wind, memory, all the intangible things humans respond to but cannot photograph. Below water there is stone becoming habitat. The location continues to function as boundary, viewpoint, threshold, just without the shape that once signalled it. When you walk away, you look back over your shoulder. The view seems unchanged, yet your memory inserts the arch into place one last time, and that is when you realise that the window wasn't lost at all. It moved from stone to perception. The sea claims rock, but humans claim meaning, and meaning remains long after structure collapses. The gate. Where time slows remains open, in the stillness of waves, in the persistence of horizon, in the way absence becomes presence. The crow that became stone. High in the centre of Gran Canaria, where clouds drift low across volcanic ridges and trade winds sweep through open air like unseen currents shaping the island's breath, rises a stone that seems less like geology and more like myth frozen mid-motion. Roque Nublo, a towering basalt monolith born from ancient eruption, stands atop a plateau like a sentinel, a silhouette visible from miles across valleys and coasts. Its shape is stark and improbable, a column rising from a broad shoulder of rock, weathered into a form that locals once compared to a crow, perched and watching the world below. For centuries, people have seen more than stone here. They have seen an identity emerging from the landscape, a presence baked into the mountain as though nature carved a creature out of solid lava and then commanded it to watch forever. The road toward the monolith winds upward from warmer lowlands where palms sway and coastal air tastes of salt, climbing gradually into cooler regions where pine forests begin. The shift is subtle at first. Shadows lengthen, wind thickens, the smell of resin replaces the scent of sea. As the elevation rises, clouds brush against treetops, leaving droplets caught on needles of Canary Island pines. The world becomes slower, quieter, and the sense of ascent turns into a sensation of crossing thresholds, moving not just upward, but inward. Eventually, the forest thins, revealing rocky slopes where vegetation clings only in crevices. The land here was shaped by caldera collapse and lava flows that hardened into layered platforms. Paths lead upward through volcanic rubble, past outcrops that look like petrified waves. And then, suddenly, Roque Nublo comes into view, a stone bird that never flew, perched upon the highest reaches of the island, gazing outward in silence. Approaching its base, you become aware of its scale. What looked smaller from distance becomes immense in proximity. Nearly 80 metres of vertical stone rising from land already elevated nearly 2,000 metres above sea level. The wind intensifies here, as though it has been directed upward along the mountain's flanks to meet the stone directly. Shadows move quickly across the plateau, driven by racing clouds. The air fluctuates between sharp chill and sudden warmth when sun breaks through. Roque Nublo absorbs it all without change. The rock surface is rough, porous, patterned by erosion. Basalt weathers slowly, its surface pocked by centuries of frost, moisture, and wind-borne sand. Touching it, you feel warmth where sun has landed and coolness where shadow lingers. The stone seems to store temperature, retaining heat, and releasing it in ways that give the impression of a creature alive beneath its surface. Circling the monolith, you notice fissures, long vertical cuts where water once seeped and froze, expanding, breaking rock bit by bit. These fissures lend shape to its form. Without them, Roque Nublo would be merely a block. Instead, it has character, edges like wings folded against its sides, a peak narrowing slightly as it rises, a face that changes profile depending on where you stand. From one angle, the formation looks stern and angular. From another, it tilts subtly, like the head of a bird regarding something unseen. This shifting identity is why people name it again and again, calling it Guardian, Sentinel, Crow, Watcher. The stone does nothing, yet seems always to look back. The plateau beneath it is broad but uneven, a natural dais rising above steep ravines. The ground is covered in loose rock, tufts of grass tufted by wind, and lichen clinging where nothing else survives. The wind at this height is persistent. It whips across the flat ground, pressing clothing to skin, driving small particles in brief gusts. The sound it makes is not a whistle, but a low and constant rush, layered with occasional sharp rattles across exposed surfaces. Stand here long enough, and you begin to sense how differently time moves at altitude. Clouds arrive from horizon to horizon in minutes. Shadows race. Sun appears, disappears, reappears. Yet the monolith remains fixed in stillness, marking the centre of the island's slow geologic clock. Climbers who reach this site often pause before attempting its low-level scrambles. Some ascend the base to sit in its lee, sheltered briefly from wind. Others circle clockwise or counterclockwise, studying its surfaces. When the sky clears, views extend across the island toward coasts where dunes shimmer in distance. On exceptionally clear days, the peak of Teide on Tenerife appears, floating above cloud banks like another towering sentinel. At such times, Roque Nublo feels less isolated. It is one of several mountain spirits rising from ocean, resting on island spines that once belonged to fire. But weather changes quickly. Clouds roll up slopes, smothering the plateau in mist that thickens the air and hides even the stone. The world becomes a sphere of grey. Wind softens. Sound dampens. Visibility shrinks to a few metres. In this moment, the monolith becomes sensed rather than seen, an idea held in fog. The crow of stone remains, even when invisible. When mist lifts, the world returns sharply. Colours re-emerge, rusty hues in rock, deep greens in distant pine forests, cobalt sky. The stone stands refreshed, almost newly revealed. It has waited countless cycles of concealment and reappearance. Erosion continues regardless. Water finds cracks, freezes at night, expands. Grains loosen, shift, fall. A few microns of change each year, barely noticeable yet unstoppable. Thus the crow is always changing, even as it appears unchanged. At sunset the plateau glows. Warm light slants across stone surfaces, creating long shadows that stretch outward toward ravines. The monolith becomes a silhouette of exaggerated form. Sharper beak, taller neck, broader wings implied by shadow geometry. Light leaves slowly. Temperatures drop. A brief calm arrives before wind strengthens again. Night at Roque Nublo is stark. The air cools quickly. Rock radiates heat away. Stars fill sky, unobstructed by lowland haze. The Milky Way arches overhead, seeming close enough to touch. Under this darkness, the stone shape becomes more ambiguous. You project meaning into its outline. Guardian, totem, watcher, whatever role ancient cultures assigned their mountain pillars. Sometimes, the wind dies entirely, leaving stillness across plateau. In this silence, small sounds emerge, grains skittering down slope, tiny cracks where stone cools, faint wings of night birds. Even human footsteps seem too loud here. The scale of quietness diminishes speech. You feel compelled to whisper. Some visitors speak of sensing presence, not supernatural, but geological, the awareness that this stone has stood through so many sunrises, storms, volcanic cycles, and generations that your existence beside it is a flicker. At dawn, light returns from behind hills, turning the east horizon into pale gold. The monolith brightens at one edge before anything else, catching first sunlight, then holding it. Slowly, warmth spreads along its flank, revealing texture, cracks, shadows. The crow wakes again without ever having slept. As morning warms, wind returns and clouds thin. The plateau becomes busy with walkers, climbers, photographers. Their presence, though temporary, adds scale. Small figures against vast stone. yet none of them diminish the stillness the rock exudes. People descend again to valleys, to warmth and air dense enough to hold sound. Roque Nublo remains where it always has, perched, watching, eroding invisibly, reshaping itself millimetre by millimetre. From a distance, it appears eternal. Up close, it reveals nothing lasts unchanged. Its legend persists because humans gave it names, myths, and interpretations. But what the stone is, fundamentally, is lava frozen mid-burst, hardened by cooling, raised by forces no human witnessed, and carved by forces we barely perceive. The crow that became stone is simply stone. And yet, because we see the crow, it endures as more than rock. It endures as story. The mountain that lost its peak, high in the granite heart of California's Sierra Nevada, where forest gives way to stone and river valleys are carved into impossible shapes, rises a mountain that seems incomplete, a thunderbolt of rock split in half, its missing summit becoming its identity. Half Dome, perhaps the most recognisable form in Yosemite, stands not as a peak, but as the idea of one, as if the earth attempted to build a perfect mountain, but stopped midway through. From afar, the massive curved face appears smooth and seamless, a vertical wall of polished granite that catches first sunlight like a shield held to the sky. On its opposite side, however, slopes descend with gentler incline, inviting ascent. Visitors look at it and feel conflict, awe at its severity, curiosity about its missing half, and a sensation that something ancient happened here, long before eyes ever witnessed it. Approaching the valley that holds it, Half Dome appears anchored behind everything else. The Merced River winds past meadows, where deer graze, and where granite cliffs reflect in slow waters. Waterfalls pour down from hanging valleys high above, their spray forming rainbows when sun hits at the right angle. Pines stand tall, firs cluster thick, meadow grasses ripple under afternoon breezes. Yet the gaze always rises toward the back of the valley, where Half Dome rises in irrational proportions, looking both unfinished and eternal at the same time. To walk toward it is to feel scale change beneath you. Yosemite Valley is wide at the bottom, but its granite walls rise sharply on both sides. Light moves differently here. Shadows form early. Sunlight seems narrow, enclosed between stone flanks. Climbers describe the first time they see Half Dome's face from base level as unnerving. A cliff that looks less like rock and more like the exposed tooth of the planet. Smooth from glaciation, vertical beyond reason, offering no ledges or holds across the lower half, it gives the impression that gravity circles it in a tighter orbit. The story of its missing peak lies in geology older than memory. Half Dome began as a huge block of intrusive granite, hard and deep beneath the surface. In time, the Sierra Nevada uplifted, exposing the rock. Glaciers advanced and retreated across these mountains many times, carving and polishing surfaces, exploiting weaknesses. The dome's west side fractured and peeled away over cycles of erosion and rock expansion. What remained was a near-perfect half of what once existed, a cross-section of a mountain, a line between what was taken and what remained. The missing dome is not absence, it is transformation. The trail to its summit begins deceptively gently among trees along the mist trail, passing Vernal Fall, where river spray dampens hikers, then Nevada Fall, where granite steps elevate one above the tree line. The air cools, and thinness begins to enter lungs. The forest gradually gives way to open granite slabs. Marmots sit along edges of the trail, alert and unafraid. Birds ride thermals rising along cliff walls. Views open outward, the valley widening behind, the river twisting below, the face of Half Dome looming ahead. The closer one draws, the more surreal the monolith appears. Its polished face reflects sun to the point of glare. The cables on its backside, installed so people can climb more safely, begin to appear as thin dark threads against pale stone. The final ascent to the summit has become legend, steep, exposed, demanding both physical endurance and psychological steadiness. People grip wooden planks anchored to metal posts, pulling themselves upward, one step at a time, their boots sliding slightly on smooth granite, their hearts hammering at both exertion and height. Those who reach the summit find themselves on an impossible platform suspended in air. The top is broad, not pointed like mountain summits elsewhere, but sweeping, almost level, curving toward the missing half in dramatic cliff drop. Standing there, you feel the world fall away on one side, an 800-metre drop straight down the vertical face, and on the other, the play of slopes receding into forest below. Few places give such a sensation of being between creation and incompletion. Wind moves across the summit in bursts, rising up valley walls and over the edge. Ravens often appear here, gliding easily, riding currents that look invisible, but are made obvious by their motion. Some sit on outcrops, watching humans with amusement or indifference. They belong here as much as stone. Weather at this height changes swiftly. Summer storms build suddenly, pushing cloud banks across the valley, striking the dome with thunder and lightning. The exposed summit becomes dangerous, sending climbers scrambling downward along cables as storm cell edges swallow them. Rain makes granite slick. Air turns cold quickly. The dome feels alive then, not hostile, but asserting scale and indifference. When sunshine returns, the mountain transforms again. The face warms. Shadows retreat. Granite glows slightly pinkish in evening light. The cliff edge casts long lines of darkness. Down below, the valley shifts from green to gold to blue as dusk deepens, waterfalls sounding softer as roar becomes distance. From the valley floor at night, Half Dome seems impossibly bright where moonlight strikes its polished surface. Stars move across its backdrop. Animals call in forest darkness, the far bark of coyote, the wing beat of owl. Human campers whisper near riverbanks, their lanterns flickering beneath giants. The stone remains quiet above all of it, but never absent. Winter reshapes the mountain once more. Snow settles on its summit, clinging to cracks, softening sharp edges. Ice forms where water seeps, expands fractures microscopically. Storms blast its face with frozen rain. Glaciers no longer rule Yosemite, but freeze-thaw cycles continue to work, the same processes that tore away. The missing half are still at play, invisible at human scale, relentless at geologic scale. Half Dome's absence, the missing half, is a teacher in humility. Mountains are not finished objects, they are processes frozen mid-step. Many visitors stand in meadows below, pointing at the great cliff and imagining the dome hole. Its absence becomes part of its beauty. Completion would be less interesting. At times, clouds gather low, hiding the entire summit, erasing identity. At other times, light breaks suddenly, illuminating the face as if revealing something waiting. This play of concealment and revelation keeps the mountain alive in perception. It never appears the same twice. In springtime, meltwater cascades through Yosemite's veins. Waterfalls swell, mist drifts far across air, trees bud and meadow grass rises. Half Dome watches it all, unchanged and yet surrounded by change. Climbers return when cables are reinstalled. Park visitors aim cameras upward. Artists sketch the outline from vantage points used for centuries. Indigenous people once viewed this rock differently, as sacred, as animate, as part of a world in motion. The idea of a broken dome might have held story or spirit in ways modern visitors only sense without fully knowing. Half Dome is peak that both is and isn't. A summit defined by the absence of summit. People love it because it looks wounded and enduring, incomplete and strong, strange and inevitable. The mountain that lost its peak also gained a face, a signature unlike any other. Standing beneath it, near Mirror Lake or meadow clearings, you see reflection. The polished granite gleams in water when stillness holds surface. Ripples distort the image, making the missing half appear briefly restored before dissolving again. The illusion reminds the viewer that what once existed may not be recoverable but can still be imagined. Night descends once more, covering rock in shadow. Stars cluster overhead, scattered across sky. The dome's face fades into darkness, only the edges distinguished where moonlight catches slight angles. The world quiets, the mountain remains. Over centuries to come, it will change subtly. More slabs may fracture and fall. Glacial polish will roughen slowly, but it will always look like something unfinished holding its integrity against time. Half Dome endured, shaping by fire, ice, water, and wind. Now it endures viewers, cameras, footsteps, and stories. It lost its peak, but in doing so gained identity. A mountain without a complete summit became summit in human imagination. A profile against sky, a challenge to climb, a presence to witness. In this way, Half Dome is less a monument than a reminder. Everything is mid-formation. Nothing is whole. Nothing is done. Even the most immovable stone is in motion, sculpted invisibly by forces beyond sight. Yosemite Valley sleeps beneath the dome each night, river whispering, air cooling, stars shimmering through pine silhouettes. Mountains do not sleep. They wait. Half Dome waits for next light, next storm, next season. Its missing half remains important because it makes the rest meaningful. As morning warms the valley floor again, mist rises off the river like faint smoke drifting between trees. The first sunlight reaches Half Dome slowly, illuminating its upper shoulders before anything beneath receives glow. It makes the summit look as though it floats, detached from the world below. Then the rest of the valley catches up. Granite faces turn silver, meadows brighten, and forest shadows soften. The dome remains silent, unchanged in appearance, yet in constant conversation with air and light. The mountain is not a monolith frozen in stone, but an engine of perception, shaping the way everything around it is seen. Clouds move differently when they slide across its face. Birds circle differently above its curve. The entire valley orients itself in reference to that great missing peak. People wander in trails beneath it, their footsteps small and forgettable against the backdrop of millions of years of uplift and erosion. Yet those small footsteps matter because humans give meaning where geology gives shape. The dome is strong because we see strength in what remains. What was removed, what was broken away, what fell long before any witness existed. All of it is part of why the rock stands so powerfully. Far below, Mirror Lake fills in spring and dries in autumn, its waters shallow and reflective when full, a meadow basin when gone. Photographers gather here hoping for stillness. A surface calm enough to reflect Half Dome in near perfect symmetry. In that inverted image, the missing half of the mountain gains faint outline in ripple and distortion, creating suggestion of wholeness where none exists. Children stare at the reflection, pointing at the upside down version, asking which one is real. Both are real, the stone and the memory of stone. Adults linger, knowing without saying that reflection is a metaphor. Nothing holds shape without change. What is lost is not erased but translated into other forms, a mirrored ghost of its original presence. Seasons move across this place without effort. Spring brings water and new leaves. Summer brings heat and thunder. Autumn brings colours in light, even if trees here do not flame as fiercely as forests further north. Winter brings snow dusting the clifftop, reminding everyone of the cold that once carved this valley into existence. The dome watches all of it, season after season, generation after generation. Stories change, languages shift, cameras evolve, from glass plates to phones, climbers change ropes to cables, to lightweight gear, but stone remains. Yet even stone is temporary. Freeze-thaw action continues to pry apart edges. Earthquakes ripple through Sierra granite. Water infiltrates fractures, carrying tiny grains downward. The missing peak is an invitation to imagine what will next be removed. Yosemite is not static. It is sculpted constantly, just at a pace far beyond lifetimes. Those who study geology here learn to read rock the way historians read text. They trace exfoliation scars, curved fractures where outer layers peeled away. They examine glacial polish, faint sheen where ice once dragged millions of grains across the surface. They inspect joints and fractures, evidence of stress, release, expansion. The dome is a ledger of moments long gone. The missing half is not mystery but record of process. The appeal lies not in solving that record but in feeling it. Travellers with no scientific training feel something similar through different senses. Standing beneath Half Dome makes breathing slower. The scale forces silence. Even if crowds exist elsewhere in the valley, beneath the Great Wall their presence seems subdued. Humans instinctively lower their voices here, as though entering a cathedral, but the cathedral was built by absence, not addition. People travel here from around the world, sometimes without full understanding of what draws them. They take photographs of waterfalls and forests, but the image they return to repeatedly is Half Dome, sunset turning its face gold, dawn turning its curve blue, storm clouds turning it ominous, moonlight turning it ghost-like. It becomes personal for different reasons: achievement, contemplation, awe, pain, healing. The mountain receives all of it equally, never acknowledging, never folding under weight. In the stillness of late evening, when the last hikers leave the cables and the summit empties, wind flows across the top unhindered. A silence settles that is almost tangible. The polished granite cools, releasing heat it absorbed through the day. Convection breezes rise up the face and spill over the summit like invisible waterfalls. You can stand there and watch nothing happen while feeling everything move, the perceptual trick that mountains impose on those who give them time. A philosopher could stay here for hours and understand that Half Dome is not half of anything. It is whole as it exists. The missing peak is part of its wholeness, not absence. Loss defines identity, shaping what remains more than completion would have. That insight is why painters return, why writers attempt description, why climbers risk exposure. They seek relationship, not just location. When rain comes, granite darkens instantly, thickening shadow. Water flows across the smooth face in veils, creating streaks that resemble tears perhaps, though the stone is beyond sorrow. The valley floor smells of wet earth and pine resin. Waterfalls intensify, booming louder in storm acoustics. Lightning occasionally strikes the summit, its energy dispersing through the stone. Nothing marks it visibly afterward. The mountain absorbs impact as it has thousands of times before. Winter storms are harsher. Snow layers accumulate at the top, then cascade off when warmed. Ice cracks form at edges, prying surfaces open. A fraction at a time. Rockfall echoes through the valley on rare nights. A reminder that even the most iconic cliff is disintegrating at a pace too slow for daily notice, but too powerful to deny. Spring's sun melts those remnants, sending snowmelt racing down gullies, disappearing into ground. Meadows green, birds return, people return. Half Dome resumes its quiet role as backdrop and focal point. Meanwhile, unseen processes continue. 1,000 years from now, a slightly altered shape will form. 10,000 years from now, different slopes and faces may exist. The dome itself might shrink, yet in this moment, in the human span of time, it remains the mountain that lost its peak, and in that loss found its identity. Climbers descend from the cable route with aching legs and trembling hands, their minds still perched on the summit even after they stand in forest shade. They say it stays with them. The exposure, the view, the sensation of walking along stone that ends abruptly at a cliff. Half Dome is less about reaching a top than about witnessing a void, the empty space where something once was or could have been. That impression endures long after ascent finishes. Even those who never climb it participate in the experience. They sit in meadows and look up, tracing contours of the dome against sky. Some never know its technical history or geological narrative. They simply feel that something powerful exists there. They are right. At some point, everyone leaves, but the dome does not. It outlasts departure. Its silhouette recedes through back window glass as vehicles exit valley, but its presence remains in thought, in photographs, in stories. That lingering is its true monument, not stone, but memory. If mountains could speak, perhaps Half Dome would not tell story of missing summit, but of becoming itself through removal. It might say completion is not goal, expression is. It might say that everything revealed is shaped by everything taken away. It might tell climbers they have not conquered anything, only witnessed process. Night falls again over Yosemite. Air cools. Crickets begin, then pause. Water flows unseen in darkness. Half Dome disappears, except for faint edge against sky. It does not need to be seen to exert influence. Like the missing half that once stood, its meaning persists beyond perception. Morning will return, and the dome will reflect first light again, resuming its silent dialogue with those who watch. It will continue losing grains of itself with every freeze and every thaw. It will continue inviting climbers upward and contemplators outward. It will remain unfinished and therefore unforgettable. The mountain that lost its peak is still rising in the only way mountains rise, in consciousness, in imagination, in scale of mind. It teaches not through presence but through absence that what has been removed is often what defines what remains. Half Dome stands as testament to time. It is the face of the earth turned outward. It is the signature of Yosemite. It is the monument of incompletion, enduring against sky and weather, telling every traveller who sees it that permanence is illusion and transformation is the truth beneath stone. The monolith, where birds don't land, out in the cold reach of the North Atlantic, where wind never truly rests and the sea never truly calms, rise two pillars of stone that look less like geology and more like remnants of beings caught in mid-stride. These are rising og Kellingin, the giant and the witch, sea stacks standing off the northern coast of the Faroe Islands, battered endlessly by weather, isolated amid crashing waves and striking not just in form, but in the way they repel all attempts at settling life. Birds circle above them daily, riding the invisible loops of coastal winds, yet they do not land. Waves smash their bases, fog coats their sides, spray climbs their faces, but no wings rest upon them. They are monoliths that stand and endure, but nothing clings to them. Approaching them from land, the coastline narrows into steep headlands where moss grows in thin mats on basalt ledges, and grass waves like fur across slopes. Faroe weather is a living thing. The air tastes of salt, rain arrives without warning, and wind cuts in sheets through valleys, funneling towards sea. Villages cling to bays below, tiny dots in comparison to the sea stacks looming beyond. From the cliffs of Adi, the two figures appear as sentinels, one thick and rectangular, rising from surf like a fortress tower, the other slimmer, tapering upward into a point that leans ever so slightly as though still moving toward shore. Legends say the stacks were once alive. A giant and his wife, sent from Iceland to steal the Faroe Islands, were caught by sunrise and frozen where they stood. Whether myth or memory turned metaphor, the story fits because Rizin or Kellingin look trapped by time. Figures attempting something and failing, left as warning or reminder. They look outward but can no longer cross. The sea continues to reach them, punishing their lower stones day after day, but nothing moves them except erosion so slow it can barely be seen. Their story is framed not by events but by endurance. From these cliffs you understand the true ferocity of their location. The sea around them is rarely calm. Waves stack like moving walls, colliding, breaking, rising again. Swells hammer the base of the stacks, exploding upward in white plumes that rise higher than fishing houses on shore. Winter storms drive water like fists against rock, producing booms that echo across fjords. There are days when the stacks disappear entirely in spray, only to reappear as silhouettes when water falls. No bird chooses to land here because no surface offers refuge. Even fulmars, masters of cliff nesting, prefer what the Faroes' bluff faces provide. Small rock pockets, sheltered by ledges. The stacks provide none. What appears monumental is inhospitable. Seen closely, the contrast between the two pillars becomes clearer. Resin, the giant, is bulky, massive, a thick obelisk rising 71 metres above water. He stands upright, shoulders square, unbending. Next to him, Kellingin, the witch, stands 68 metres high, but her top narrows to a needle that leans inland. At distance she seems thinner, sometimes fragile. There are cracks near her base, evidence that someday she may fall, as other pharaohs' stacks have before her. Locals know this. They have watched cliffs disappear over generations. They understand that standing does not mean surviving forever. Clouds streak low across this part of the ocean, often scraping cliff tops. They change shape with astonishing speed. Sunlight may appear, warming the grass and painting the stacks gold for a brief moment, then vanish as mist returns. Light refuses permanence here. Everything is in flux except stone. Even water, which looks chaotic, follows repeated rhythms, returning again and again to the base of the stacks like worshippers paying respect to ancient idols. Walking the cliff paths, your brain misjudges distance. The stacks seem near but require descent into valley and ascent to another viewpoint to see fully. The land is carved by glacial fingers long gone. Deep troughs, sudden drops, walls of basalt. The air is never still. Even when calmer, it hums. Standing at edge, coat pulled tight, you hear sea roar below and wind scrape your ears. You watch birds spiral but avoid descending to the monoliths. They glide past, hover above, scream into void, yet none alight. Villagers nearby live in constant relationship with these formations. Fishermen once studied them to judge wave patterns and storm tracks. Children grew up hearing the legend before seeing the stacks. Elders know exact angles where the sea hides or reveals them. This sense of belonging forms without inhabiting the place itself. The stacks are too severe to know intimacy. They are landmarks by presence, not by participation. The Faroes' landscape teaches this lesson often. Beauty does not invite possession. The islands are majestic but indifferent to those who walk them. Sheep graze cliff edges but risk falling. Seabirds nest on steep walls but lose chicks to wind. People live here by adapting, not conquering. The stacks embody this attitude better than any other feature. They stand as if challenging those who assume nature welcomes them. At different times of day, appearance shifts. Under low light, the stacks store shadow like ink. Their sides become outlined, edges sharper, sea darker. Under bright noon sun, their shapes flatten, appearing almost drawn onto a horizon. Fog makes them ghosts. Clear air makes them monuments. Storms make them invisible. Rare calm seas make them mythic. On the water, boat captains sometimes draw near but rarely too near. Swell is unpredictable. From sea level, the stacks rise like cathedral towers, huge and isolated. The spray that appears from below is spectacular. Upward detonations of white water, roaring as it meets air. Kellingin, slenderer, seems almost in danger in such moments. Waves appear to chase her base, pounding relentlessly, threatening fracture. And someday, when her base weakens enough, she will likely fall. People will turn out to watch, perhaps, but the remnants will still be unreachable rocks battered by sea. The monolith where birds don't land may someday become the monolith that sank. Until then, they endure. Human movement around them feels small. Cars driving away look like insects fleeing weather. Hikers appear as dots against green slopes. Villages cling to earth, but the stacks are the ones that remain visible across miles of coastline. They are part of skyline, even when hidden by weather. Wind carries sound strangely in Pharaoh. It sharpens and distorts. You might hear water colliding with basalt from hundreds of meters away when wind shifts just right. Then silence returns in gust. The stacks feel aware in such shifts, not alive, but possessing presence defined by the forces that surround them. Standing here long enough changes your thoughts. Movement slows. You look longer, speak less. The stacks appear as if thinking or waiting. The mind fills their stillness with meaning. You imagine a giant refusing to fall, and the witch leaning forward, still determined. But nothing moves. The real myth is endurance. Their story is not event, but persistence. When storms break in winter, waves can reach halfway up their height. Photographs show plumes taller than lighthouse towers. Salt water thrown hundreds of feet into air. Birds vanish inland during such turmoil. The stacks absorb impact silently, losing microscopic fragments every strike. Erosion feeds sea. Sea exposes more stone. Stone resists collapse until one day it no longer does. Night is another transformation entirely. Pharaoh's darkness can be absolute. Clouds covering moon. No settlements nearby bright enough to compete. The stacks vanish into black form. You know they are there because waves still crash into something unseen, because wind still splits against invisible surfaces. If stars appear, silhouettes emerge faintly, pillars against nothingness. Their isolation becomes cosmic then. They look less like formations on Earth and more like markers from another world left on edge of ocean. Dawn returns slowly. Light creeps. Outlines appear. Cloud edges brighten. The stacks surface again out of grey water. Birds reappear, but still they do not land. The wind begins another day. The stacks resume being witnesses. The Pharaoh's relationship with rock is ancient. These islands were forged in fire, cooled, lifted, carved by ice and sea. Cliffs are not backdrop but actors in life. The stacks, standing offshore, are the purest representation. Neither island nor ocean, neither reachable nor ignored. Their value lies in being seen, not touched. Travellers often find themselves more moved by Rissin or Kellingin than by more famous coastal sites. Something about their stillness, hostility, and story strikes deeper. They embody narrative rather than offer scenery. They feel unfinished in function, but finished in meaning. People often say birds don't land on them because they know something, because creatures sense instability, or curse, or myth. But the truth is physical. There is nothing to cling to. Yet the mystery persists, because mystery is easier to believe than mechanics. By midday, the wind freshens. The stacks once more receive the full roar of ocean. Crests break against basalt like battering rams. Spray coats rocks in constant drizzle. Sound echoes across cliff faces. And above all of it, birds circle but never land. A simple fact that says more than any myth could invent. These pillars, whether giant and witch or mere basalt, rise as testament to forces humans were not meant to match. They endure without choice. They erode without complaint. They stand within waters that want them gone but take them only grain by grain. And when you leave the viewpoint, retreating inland toward shelter, you look back repeatedly. The stacks shrink in size but not in presence. Even from valley roads they remain in corner of eye. Even when hidden by terrain, you know exactly where they stand. For it is not the stacks themselves that follow, it is the feeling they leave. Their silhouettes remain behind your eyelids even when you turn away, as if the coastline itself has imprinted them into thought. The pharaohs are used to this sensation. Mountains, sea stacks, ravines and ridgelines become psychological landmarks as much as physical ones. Risen or Kellingin are among the most potent of these. People speak of them casually, as if they were neighbours, always visible through the window yet never approached, familiar and unreachable at the same time. They occupy conversation not because anyone can stand upon them, but because they remain constant in a world where everything else changes. If you lived here long enough, you would watch weather shape them day after day. Summer light reveals new colour on their faces. Winter storms drag sheets of foam across their height. Satellite images show their outlines shifting subtly over decades. Tiny portions lost to collapse, subtle alterations in mass. But the human eye still reads them as permanent. That is part of their power. They seem unmovable, eternal, even as erosion continues. One day, Kellingin will fall. Locals know this. Its base is fractured, and when the right winter swell arrives combined with the right freeze-thaw cycle, the slender top will break. When it does, the sea will accept it, turn it into reef or rubble or sand, depending on how many centuries the fragments endure. Some will mourn, others will call it part of the story. Risen, the larger stack, may endure far longer. He has the mass to withstand what she cannot. Yet even he is not immune. He too will lose edges and surfaces secretly to the sea's patient bite. Watching them under shifting weather changes understanding. Under sun they look calmer, contemplative, almost sculptural. Under fog they feel ancient and mythic, as if they predate land. Under storm they become ferocious, their edges blurred by spray and wind. In autumn twilight, when skies glow pink and clouds tear apart, they resemble guardians or prisoners. No one knows which role best fits. Locals sometimes tell the legend not to children but to travellers, because telling it deepens the impact. The tale of two beings caught between islands gives the stacks intention. Without it, they are rock. With it, they are characters. Myths hold landscapes the way roots hold soil. Even when replaced by science, they leave impressions. You stare at Ryzen and think of the giant forced to watch forever. You look at Kellingen's slight forward tilt and wonder whether she still leans towards shore, trying to continue her task centuries after being frozen. Folklore reshapes stone into memory. Sitting on cliff grass above Tjernavik, you feel the sea's breath rise upward. The bay is curved gently inward, catching waves that roll in lines. Stacked turf roof houses cluster there, facing ocean as if greeting weather instead of fearing it. The sound of village life, doors open and shut, dogs bark, sheep bleat, drifts faintly, all of it dwarfed by the roar of surf where Rizin and Kellingen stand. The stacks exist outside human scale. Nothing humans do touches them. This distance between our world and theirs is not separation, but the axis around which the coastline's identity spins. There are times when sunlight catches their western faces, igniting faint orange within basalt. You watch for minutes as colour shifts. Wind holds steady. The stacks do not move. Their stillness reveals movement elsewhere. Clouds scuttle, waves break, gulls lift and fall. The stacks simply remain. This contrast, everything moving except stone, creates the sense that the stacks choose stillness, that they impose permanence despite environment trying to erase them. At sea level, the power of their isolation becomes clearer. Boats that approach find themselves dwarfed by walls of rock. The swell rises unpredictably, rebounding off the stack's bases and creating chaotic troughs. The impact noises are incredible, like drums played by the ocean itself. Even in calm conditions, the Atlantic here feels wild. The stacks are carved out of this wildness. They are its trophies. When water recedes back into itself, it drags at the stone, leaving salt trails behind. The cycle repeats. It is difficult not to imagine the sea talking to the stacks, complaining, taunting, coaxing. At night, when clouds thin, stars appear over the Faroe Islands in impossible clarity. The sea stacks darken to outlines against faint luminescence. Sometimes northern lights streak overhead, turning sky green or violet. In such rare nights, the stacks become silhouettes beneath celestial rivers. They feel prehistoric then, older than island, older than ocean. Something in that view unsettles and comforts at the same time. It is no accident that the Faroes feel connection to such isolated features. They live amid extremes of scale. Massive headlands, high cliffs, sea tunnels, mountains that rise abruptly from villages. Rizin or Kellingen are perhaps the purest symbols of this. They hold everything the Faroes represent: resilience, loneliness, endurance, transformation, beauty that borders on cruelty. But what makes them unforgettable is the one truth embedded in your title. Birds don't land on them. Something about their surfaces denies settlement. They are too steep, too exposed, too punished by spray. Even puffins who burrow into earth or occupy ledges others would never attempt avoid them. The stacks are part of the ecosystem but not part of habitation. They exist without intimacy, without the chaos of life landing upon them. That paradox, huge structures that attract attention but repel presence, gives them an eerie purity, a sense that they remain untouched not by difficulty but by choice. The Faroes coastline is dotted with other stacks and arches, many eroded away over time, but none carry the same mythic identity as these two, perhaps because they resemble beings, perhaps because their legend fits them, perhaps because they stand where land ends and sea begins, reflecting uncertainty. Whatever the reason, they become focal points for thought. Imagine sitting here for an hour. Waves continue their percussion. Birds call. Wind threads through grass, then shifts direction. Clouds ride horizon. The stacks do nothing except stand. Yet that standing feels like communication. You project questions onto them, and they answer with absence. Their silence is not empty. It is instruction. This is how endurance looks, they say, without language. This is how the world remembers without caring. In the end, you leave the viewpoint. You walk inland toward village, toward warmth and shelter, but you keep looking back until terrain blocks view. Even then, you know exactly where they remain. When you return to your lodging, their silhouettes still hover behind your eyes. The stacks do not need presence to remain present. They linger as shape in thought long after you stop seeing them, and perhaps that is their true role, not as places birds do not land, but as places humans do not forget. Stone rising out of furious water, frozen figures who cannot move and cannot fall without ceremony, myth wearing the clothes of geology. You came to see landscape, you leave with story. The monoliths return to their solitude, enduring everything except indifference. The temple hidden in a single stone, high in the sacred mountain ranges of Shandong, where pilgrims have walked stone paths for over 3,000 years and emperors once climbed to greet heaven, there is a rock that seems more like a threshold than an object. Mount Tai, or Taishan, is revered in Chinese cosmology as the axis between earth and the divine. Here, thousands of carved inscriptions, ancient stairways, and temples cling to the mountain's slopes. Yet among the grand halls and shrines, one of the most powerful structures is not a palace or pavilion, but a single block of stone. It is known quietly as the Stone Gate, a doorway carved into rock, architectural in intention but geological in essence. To encounter it is to stand before something that feels not built but revealed. Mount Tai is approached in stages. The world below is dense, villages, markets, movement, but as you ascend, the air thins and the mountain begins to separate you from everything familiar. Pines twist their roots around granite ribs, incense wafts from temple courtyards, pilgrims murmur prayers between breaths. Massive stone staircases lift the body upward, thousands of steps, their surfaces polished by centuries of feet. The mountain has been climbed by emperors, poets, monks, scholars, pilgrims seeking fortune or forgiveness. Yet of all its sacred markers, the Stone Gate is among the simplest. It sits along the mid-slopes where cliffs rise sharply and forests thin. The landscape opens and narrows at once, expansive in view, confined in structure. You do not reach the Stone Gate by accident. The path turns and aligns toward it as though funneling thought. When you approach it for the first time, it strikes you less like sculpture and more like a moment of space cut into something primordial. Two upright slabs form sides of the passage and a crossbeam rests above, not separate pieces, but carved out from a single mass of stone. There are no seams, no bricks, no assembly. It is a doorway that has never opened because it is already open. Temple, arch, gateway, monument, all contained in one stone. Standing before it, you sense the restraint in its form. It is not ornate, no roof tiles, no gilded detail, no dragon carvings, but its simplicity carries weight. The stone surface bears faint tool traces, weathered to softness. Lichens map its edges. Characters have been etched around it across centuries. Emperors leaving proclamations, monks leaving sutras, scholars leaving poetry. Their messages cling to rock face like whispered intentions. Some remain sharp, others eroded into indecipherable texture, but the Stone Gate itself persists as if untouched. Wind passes through it, time passes across it, pilgrims pass beneath it, yet the shape remains unchanged. This is where you understand why the gate matters. In Chinese sacred architecture, gateways mark transitions, between mundane and sacred, between one phase of journey and another, between the world below and the plateau closer to heaven. Most gates are crafted, timber frames painted red, stone walls stacked with mortar, grand archways lion guarded. But Mount Tai's Stone Gate is carved. It is as if the mountain itself acknowledged the need for a threshold and formed one by subtraction rather than construction. Pass beneath it, and something shifts subtly. The air seems different, cooler, more resonant. Forest sounds fall behind. The path narrows and then widens, revealing a sweep of terraces, temples beyond, clouds drifting past exposed ridges. That transition is the gate's function. You may not believe in spirits or cosmology, but something about its form makes you feel you have crossed into a higher chamber of the mountain. Travellers describe it as a door that leads inward rather than upward. The mountain has many temples, but the Stone Gate feels like the first one, the hidden one, the one you don't kneel before but walk through. Perhaps that is why emperors inscribed stone here. They wanted words preserved in rock at the moment where ascent becomes awakening. Clouds often gather along this stretch, sometimes moving so low they brush the lintel. Mist curls around uprights, thickening space. When sunlight returns, beams cut through the opening dramatically, making the passage glow. At sunset, the stone warms to copper. At dawn, it chills to silver. At night, moonlight touches it with pale sheen. It transforms with light, yet never loses its intention. Ancient pilgrims approached Mount Tai with ritual preparation, fasting, prayers, cleansing, then waited for moments like this. The stone gate may not be grand, but it registers the significance of effort. The climb behind you suddenly gains meaning once you stand before it. The climb ahead of you seems altered. Technically, it is not the only stone gate on Chinese mountains, but Mount Tai's holds something others do not. The weight of 3,000 years of footsteps, inscriptions etched by dynasties that no longer exist, offerings made in silence, breaths exhaled in reverence. It holds time differently. A plaque does not mark it as temple, and yet many consider it one. Continue walking beyond, and the mountain demands more ascent. The heavenly street rises from here, staircases pulling pilgrims higher, temples emerge, Jade Emperor Temple at summit, Azure Cloud Temple on terraces, Confucian shrines along ridge. The stone gate becomes first threshold of awakening. People pray at higher altars, but remember the gate. Turn back for a moment and look at it from above. Its proportions change. The lintel looks narrower, the frame smaller, perspective compresses it. Yet it feels larger because you now know what it marks. Perhaps that is its design. Small until crossed, immense once left behind. Mountain winds shift, pines sway, bells ring, faint from temples above. The stone gate stands only meters tall, yet it might be the most enduring structure on Mount Tai. Temples require repair, inscriptions fade, paths are rebuilt, but the gate persists, not because humans built it, but because the mountain was persuaded to reveal it. In that sense, the stone gate is a lesson, that sacredness is not always constructed but uncovered, that thresholds are made by intention, not material, that sometimes the greatest temple is a void carved into permanence. As you descend the mountain hours later, exhausted legs gripping stair treads, passing under the stone gate again feels different. You have crossed twice. You understand more now than when you first stepped through. That is pilgrimage, returning change to the same place. The stone gate does nothing but stand. It waits, receiving every climber without judgment. It lets those who believe feel its power. It lets those who don't keep walking. It keeps history behind its simple form. Carved characters, dynasties, prayers, weather, footsteps, breath. It is a doorway in the middle of a mountain, and a mountain inside a doorway. A temple hidden in a single stone, revealed not by being seen, but by being crossed. The giant who slept on the coast. Along the northern shore of Lake Superior, where the water looks more like inland sea than lake, and weather sweeps in with the unpredictability of ocean storms, lies a peninsula that resembles something far older than geology. The outline of a colossal figure lying on its back, its head, torso, and folded legs forming the horizon. This is the sleeping giant, a massif of basalt and diabase cliffs rising abruptly from green forest, long enough to dominate kilometres of shoreline. From Thunder Bay, across the water, the silhouette is unmistakable, a giant in repose. Head to the west, knees raised to the east, shoulders broad against the sky. People who live here grow up watching that shape, learning its story, carrying its image internally the way others carry skyline or mountain peaks. Approach it by highway, and its scale dissolves into trees and ridges. The body disappears. You must distance yourself to see it again. Sleeping Giant Provincial Park is one of those places that feels like both myth and terrain at once. Forest paths weave through spruce and birch, lakes shimmer under shifting sky, cliffs rise in sudden escarpments, and all of it serves the sleeping form that only fully reveals itself from water or distant shore. The park is built around this presence, not to disturb it, but to walk among it. The Ojibwe origin legend speaks of Nanabiju, a spirit turned to stone to protect a secret treasure. The myth says he sleeps eternally, facing upward, and if disturbed, his magic fades and fortune disappears. The story frames the peninsula as something more than rock, a guardian laid in place. Even if one does not adhere to the myth as literal truth, the land reinforces the feeling. The sleeping giant does not look accidental. The contours align too well. Chin slope, chest rise, knees curled, feet extended. The form holds its integrity through shadow and cloud, through winter snow and summer haze. To walk inside the giant is to feel scale differently. Trails lead through thick woods, where moss covers boulders and roots coil across ground. Lakes lie hidden, their surfaces mirror stillness when wind pauses. Wetlands teem with hidden life, frogs, birds, insects. Then abruptly the forest ends at edge of enormous cliffs. The skyline trail rises to a viewpoint where the sleeping giant's height becomes apparent. Below lies Lake Superior, vast, cold, blue-grey, stretches beyond sight. From here it appears oceanic, horizon indistinct, waves driven by storms that travel hundreds of kilometres unhindered. The giant's cliffs are sheer, rising more than 200 metres from the lake below. Walking here evokes a feeling of being inside something alive, on the ribcage of a fallen titan. Wind claws at the exposed ridge, ravens hover in draughts and glide to treetops far below. The sound of water hitting inaccessible rock faces travels upward like distant breathing. Even in clear weather, you sense the force of a wind-carved stone. Storm days are another experience entirely. Waves slam the base unseen, spray rises in curtains, and mist drives into forest, chilling air. The legend says Nanabiju sleeps because betrayal broke his heart, that he turned to stone to protect what could no longer be protected. That sorrow imbues the shape with melancholy, but standing on the cliffs gives another perspective. The giant does not look defeated, he looks watchful. His form curves outward, guarding the bay. The city of Thunder Bay lies sheltered behind him, a subtle relationship between myth and geography. The landmass works as breakwater against violent waves, absorbing energy, shifting currents. The giant's presence is literal protection. Hikers move through terrain without always seeing the silhouette above. They walk between the giant's knees and shoulders, unaware of how their path aligns with profile visible from afar. Lakes inside park lie like blue eyes between rock ridges. Trails lead to Cabuyun Bay, Sawyer Bay, Tea Harbour, places where still water rests directly below towering cliffs. Canoeists and kayakers paddle beneath the giant's legs, dwarfed by walls that lean outward. From water level, the sleeping giant is less a body and more an immense fortress. But return to Thunder Bay or any ridge facing west, and the giant forms again. Shadows draw lines between features, defining head, torso, legs. Clouds drift above like blankets. Sunrise and sunset transform the figure, peach glow on shoulders, fading outlines under dusk. Winter snows frost the form, white, deep shadows cutting between segments. The sleeping giant lies under the sky but appears to rule it. Spring on the peninsula wakes slowly. Snow thaws, water rises, trees bud. Animals reappear. Foxes, bears, moose tracks in mud. Loons return to lakes, their calls echoing like something ancient. Summer fills forest with humidity and insects. The cliffs stay dry, wind-worn. Autumn brings blades of colour, birch and maple flame, gold and red, while evergreen stands steady. Falling leaves carpet the trails. The giant changes attire but never posture. Visitors set foot atop the giant's chest, the famous top of the giant lookout, and stand at one of Ontario's most dramatic views. The lake spreads in one direction, forest in another, skyline of distant city faint against horizon. Height gives illusion of floating. Wind presses bodies toward rock. It is quiet except for periodic gusts and bird wings. People linger here longer than expected, drawn by combination of exposure and security. The giant feels immense yet stable. The park's remoteness amplifies this experience. You are hours from major cities, surrounded by wilderness. Cell signals fade, roads narrow, sounds diminish, except the natural ones. Darkness at night is thick, stars bright, Milky Way visible, northern lights occasionally draping green over the sleeping giant's silhouette. The land feels ancient, untouched, even immortal. Yet like all rock, it erodes. Freeze-thaw cycles peel stone slowly. Cliffs drop fragments occasionally, heard but not witnessed. Storms scour surfaces. The sleeping giant's profile may shift over centuries, but likely so subtly no one living would notice. Giants change slowly. Indigenous traditions view the form not as accident, but as story incarnate. Myths exist because shapes like this demand them. The sleeping giant seems purposeful, like a being resting after long watch. The idea that betrayal turned him to stone mirrors human experience, lost shaping identity. But geology gives another truth. Lava hardened, uplifted, sculpted by glaciers, then drowned partly by lake-level rise. Both truths coexist. One speaks to narrative, one to time. People familiar with the giant, returning after years, say they feel comfort seeing it unchanged. It grounds community identity. For many, the sleeping giant is Thunder Bay's face, a landmark that anchors home even for those who move far away. The horizon silhouette becomes vocabulary of memory. On windy days, the sound across lake shifts. Low rumble, carrying over water, crashing against cliffs. Fog cloaks the figure until only faint ridge remains visible. Then, Breeze tears curtain away, and the giant reappears as if waking. Storms roll lightning over him, illuminating profile briefly in sudden flashes. Then night swallows it again. To leave Sleeping Giant Provincial Park is to exit a world where landscape has personality. Forest closes behind, roads curve through dense green, lakes vanish behind tree trunks. But as you cross bridge into Thunder Bay and look across Superior again, the giant greets you, unchanged. You see the head first, then chest, then knees. Suddenly the myth returns. The guardian asleep, the spirit watching. The sleeping giant is powerful, not because it moves, but because it doesn't. Things around it age, cities, people, roads, seasons. The giant persists, dreaming perhaps of time before names, before maps. Whether you believe Nana Bijou sleeps there, or think geology shaped the illusion, the effect is the same. The silhouette commands attention, directs imagination, offers continuity. There is tranquility in that shape across water, reassurance that some forms hold, that land remembers its roles even when people forget. The giant remains on the coast, unmoving, unbothered, enduring wind and wave and winter. Travellers leave changed, the giant does not. And that may be the truth behind legend. The most powerful guardians are those who seem asleep, yet never cease watching. Thank you for wandering with us through sleeping giants, vanished gates, and the quiet stories written in stone. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from. Until our next Unearthed Secret, may the ancient places stay with you long after the screen goes dark.